Keith.
And I'm Bailey.
We're going to teach you the proper ways to find a proper campsite.
First off, when you're having a campsite, you have to first decide if you're going to be finding a pristine campsite or an established campsite. Established campsite is what it sounds like. It's established. People have been there. There's likely a fire ring. It's likely nice flat ground, good for camping, etc. But we're going to show you how to find a pristine campsite, which is off-trail and is not established.
The main thing about a pristine campsite is that you shouldn't be around like trails or shorelines, and you should be far away from any set trails so that way there's less noise and less disturbance for other people camping or hiking through the trails.
When you're looking for a pristine campsite as well, there's 5 things you should keep in mind: location, aesthetics, regulations, impact, and safety. Remember that with Laris, because that's how I just remembered it. First off, where in the world are you? If you're up here and it's snowy, you probably want some shelter from wind, etc. So when you're in like a cold climate, it's nice to have protection from wind. We have a lot of trees. It's still a little bit breezy, but you know. Other things to keep in mind is where are the open areas? Where will the wind be coming at you from? Also, if you want to be getting up early, it's nice to have the sun hitting you. So is there an opening to the east, which this one kind of is.
So aesthetics is when you are trying to get away from trails and you want to be 200 feet away from the water. You want to be away from the trails to keep the noise pollution down for other campers and just people hiking.
And that actually brings us into rules and regulations. That is a common rule and regulation in most areas. One thing to keep in mind, sometimes you can't always follow rules and regulations to the T. But if you're in a group, you have to explain why, and you can't have a do as I say, not as I do thing. You have to make it be a good reason. Rules and regulations often include just simple stuff like leave no trace, no cutting down extra trees, no cutting up wood, just gather what wood you can find. Some places you can go will actually let you cut up already dead stuff, but that's not quite as common. So wherever you're camping, be sure that you just know all the rules and regulations and follow them as best as you can. And if there's any way to avoid breaking it, do it. You know, that means leaving and finding somewhere else.
Okay, so next one's impact, and that's like you want to find good stable ground. You don't want to make too much erosion, or you want to leave no trace. You don't want to have any part of the environment be disturbed whatsoever. You also don't want to affect the wildlife around you and keep that to a bare minimum. Obviously, sometimes there's like rodents and chipmunks you're going to end up encountering, but you want to just leave the wilderness as it is.
Yeah, and off of impact, let's say this is a dead tree and you want to like take off branches for your firewood. It's probably a bad idea. This tree is still good habitat for something. Oftentimes they're easier to hollow out so things will live in them. So even if something is dead, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not impacting it by taking it. The next is safety. Again, with dead tree, don't put your tent next to one. Dead branches, be very aware of that type of stuff. Those are called widowmakers for a good reason.
Because they will kill you, and then your dead wife will be missing you and become a widow.
Or you'll be dead, and your wife. Not your dead wife will become a widow. Yeah, anyway. If you're camping near rock formations, be sure nothing's gonna fall on you. If you're at the end of a slope, it's kind of a bad idea. If like California mudslides, avoid anything that will do anything like this. When you're selecting a campsite in bear country especially, avoid underbrush areas. That's often where they like to bed just because it's a really good shelter, it's good insulation.
Make sure you have a good tree to use a bear hang so that way you don't attract the bears into your campsite as well. So Bailey, how come I can't camp right here? This is a great spot right here. It's nice and open. There's just a little trail here. Why can't I camp here?
So you said that there was a little trail right here. Again, you can't have trail, and it's also against almost everywhere's rules and regulations. You have to be considerate of other people that are going to be walking through here, and if you have a tent right here, it's kind of going to ruin their wilderness experience.
Can't they just go around it?
Well, what do you think, Buns?
I think we should find a better spot.
I think so too.
So Bailey, how come I can't just tent right here? I think this would be perfect to set up a tent and have a nice view of the whole area.
Well, Buns, you're kind of on a brush pile and rock pile, so it's not that safe. It's very likely that it's going to erode.
It's very safe. Look at that.
Well, one, you're probably going to ruin your tent and your equipment because this is pretty sharp stuff. B, you're on a very tight slope, so you're probably going to slide. B, when you slide, because you are going to slide, you're probably gonna be rode at this, and one time might not be a big thing, but other people might do it, other people might do it, and we want to have as little impact as possible.
So it could have a very prolonged effect if people keep doing it.
Exactly, Mons.
Then I guess this is a bad spot.
Very good.
So Bailey, how come we don't just camp right out here? It's nice, open, flat. I mean, it would be a perfect spot.
Well, Mons, we should take Laris into consideration. We have a beautiful ride, which is quite nice. We also have wind. If you look around, it's pretty snowy. It's gonna be pretty cold wind. So there's location. Now, do you don't remember what comes next, Mons?
Aesthetics.
All right. This is actually a rather aesthetic place. The trails are really far away, kind of moral, like for other campers. Then what's the next one?
Regulations.
Regulations. If we start tramping around out here, we're probably breaking a lot of regulations, and also it's probably kind of swampy further out there, which we'll get into safety later. Next one?
Next one, safety.
Thanks.
Impact.
Becky, can you tell me why this would be a bad place for impact?
Well, it looks to be like a marshy type area, so it might be a protected habitat or something. It will ruin the environment for all the animals.
Very good ones. And then safety.
That's what I was asking.
Okay, fine. And then do you know which one comes next once?
The next one would be safety.
Yeah, and safety. This is kind of dry grass, so if we wanted to have a fire, it'd be a fire hazard, a safety hazard for that. Another safety thing, it's kind of a marshy area. We don't really know, because there's snow, how deep this gets or where it would get deep. So if we started setting it up something, one of us could fall through. I mean, it wouldn't be necessarily life-threatening, but, if we're far off the trail and we're far away from stuff, you don't want to be getting wet.
Dang, I hope that this was going to be a good spot to stay away from Widowmakers, but I guess we got to find another spot. What about here, Bailey? This looks like a nice flat ground with no dead trees around. Is this a good tenting spot?
Well, let's go through Laris again, Bunce.
All right.
So location, we are in Indy, Minnesota. It's winter, so we want to have a nice windbreak. Do we have that?
I think we do. There's plenty of trees around to stop the wind, and we're not in a very wide open area.
Well, and I also think that we're going to want to be traveling pretty early in the morning. And it appears like we have a nice eastward sunrise. So that's pretty awesome there.
So we'll wake up with the sunrise.
Yeah, that's great. So on to the next one.
Aesthetics.
Yeah. So what do you think about those? I think that we're pretty far away from all the trails.
I think so too. They're very far away from the water source, so we won't disturb the water source at all.
Mm-hmm. No one's going to run into us because we're off trail. We're going to be being pretty nice to all those other camper people and hikers and whoever else is crazy enough to be out here. So next we have rules and regulations.
Well, you said it already that we're far enough away from the trails, and that's one of the biggest rules we need to do is keep away from those trails when we tent.
Yep, and I don't think that we're breaking any other rules by being here. We are on the property that we said we were going to be on.
Yep.
And
well, the impact looks pretty good. I mean, we're not disturbing any wildlife. We're not disturbing any of the natural settings. We're not taking down trees. We got this nice solid ground here. There won't be much at all disturbed from our putting up our tent.
yep, it's nice and flat. There's no vegetation down there, or any rocks that will be hurting us. There aren't any little holes that any critter will be living in that we're getting in the way. There isn't any brush around, so it's not like we're going to be embarrassing, even though that doesn't mean we aren't going to have any bears.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about the safety? Are we pretty safe here?
Well, I think we're pretty safe. I don't see any dead branches above us. There are some branches. None of these trees are dead.
Nope. Can't move that tree.
None of these trees are dead. We aren't on a slope. There aren't any rocks above us. And I don't see any big fire safety hazards with dry brush around, dry grass. I think that we found a good site, Buds.
All right. Way to go.
But
Backhand tree.